Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Erik Kostelnik, founder and CEO of Postal. Postal is an offline marketing automation platform and marketplace that helps personalize, automate, and scale direct mail, internal and external events, branded company swag, and personalized gifts to drive better engagement with prospects, customers, partners, and employees. Erik, I'm so excited to chat with you, especially your story and experience is particularly interesting, seeing kind of tech in its kind of heyday, but also what it is now. And really what's interesting and personally, when I kind of was brought into my career in tech, the different kind of ways people were looking to change the way we engage with customers and partners and kind of expand the amount of things that we do versus just email campaigns and phone calls, but how much value and how high touch can we kind of create processes around engagement with customers and people affiliated with our business. And I'm so excited to see what you're doing at Postal and how you're able to kind of expand that offering. But before we get into that, what were you doing before you started the company?
Yeah, thanks, Julian. Thanks for having me on. I was an individual contributor when I started and got into work after I graduated from school, and then I got myself into technology and became a leader very quickly in technology, working for a couple startups that ended up being big companies, and then ended up deciding to start my own businesses. And so this would be my second business that I founded. But ultimately, always been inquisitive, curious around how to solve problems with technology. And ultimately, I've been spending a lot of my career in HR tech and now in sales and marketing technology.
And what have you seen in terms of how the contributor role has changed or has it changed a lot in terms of ways we engage with people, ways we kind of build our brand and outreach and things like that? How have you seen that evolution?
Yeah, I mean, I think fundamentally the individual sales and marketing role hasn't changed that much.
Mhm.
The access to resources to help scale what we do has changed.
Yeah.
So when you look at just the things that I did as an individual contributor very early on in my career, it's not like we're doing anything much different than
Sure.
what I originally did. It's just you're using solutions that allow those things to be much more scalable. So when you think about it, I was originally selling from spreadsheets, and those spreadsheets turned into Salesforce. I had a rotary phone at the time that I was making phone calls from. There was an email address, but no one was really using email for sales prospecting. And that has now kind of advanced into, and I was writing handwritten notes, and I was sending college T-shirts or sweatshirts along to potential sales prospects. All of those channels and how you activate and run a sales process, those haven't changed. You just are now doing it through different systems, right? You now have your marketing automation software that helps marketing engage with prospects from an email and digital marketing perspective. Then you have solutions like Outreach and SalesLoft and Groove that are helping automate the function of emails and sequences, Zoom Info and LinkedIn Navigator that help you really consolidate prospect information and make your job easier with finding people to call so you don't have to get through gatekeepers.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, as you look at Postal and what we're doing, we're just helping automate that channel for sales reps to be able to send and create high touch opportunities with their prospects. And all those things together ultimately help you create a scalable process. So I think now what you have is just a better tool set than what I did in the past, but ultimately the fundamentals of sales and marketing haven't changed much.
Yeah, outside of I guess phone, obviously email is now kind of one of many preferred ways of communicating and reaching out to somebody. But is there anything in addition to those kind of main, I would say, phone, email, and mail are kind of the buckets that you can get and engage with somebody. But what about social channels? Are those a
Social channels. Oh
fad?
yeah, I was just going to say that. No, absolutely not. I mean, LinkedIn has been proven to be a massive channel for communication, and especially for professionals. It's created a network to allow you to reach out and see the content and the information that people generally care about. And I would say that LinkedIn very much is kind of the new Twitter. If you see how they've structured that feed, and how people are leveraging it to create opportunities and a voice of the customer, a voice of a prospect, or even the voice of yourself. All of those things can lead into creating value propositions for whatever item you're selling to whatever person you're trying to target. So yeah, I mean, there's this omni-channel approach of using all these different things. Then you have events, right? You have virtual events, you have offline events, and those events obviously draw opportunities too to have conversations. So really, it's all about taking all that technology and now understanding what is your true value proposition for your business product that you're selling, and then what is your target ICP, and that ideal customer profile is super important. Who's going to receive that message, and then it's really just about how do you scale that, and how are you able to build that and get it in front of as many people as possible, especially in today's day and age where you see your overall top of the funnel decreasing in technology. We talked a little bit before we started about how technology has changed dramatically over the last, call it 12, 15 years to where we are today, where it is very tough times to be in technology, and it continues to get tougher. And I think we're going to see a lot of poor sales or product solutions go to the wayside here over the next 12 months. So ultimately, we're in a very interesting time, and trying to tell the story as much as I can to folks like yourself and to your audience.
Yeah, no, and I'm thinking, and I agree with the big boom of Silicon Valley, all these tech companies getting massive amounts of checks, and really on evaluation based on revenue, not actual profits. So it seems like a lot of companies are shifting towards having either very, very mature kind of organizations in terms of the operation, the structure, and are decreasing other outlets like whether it's sales function or marketing or HR. But obviously, sales cannot decrease in its ability to gain brand recognition, be valuable in terms of word of mouth, create connections, have that warm lead kind of trickle down through a pipeline and a funnel that kind of converts. But where do you see a lot of companies failing in their sales motion? Is it their ICP? Do they not understand who they're reaching out to? Is it the strategies, the tactics that they're using to convey their value? Or is it the closing? Where have you seen kind of the I guess where companies kind of fall short?
Yeah, good question. So there's three things that my past companies and the past businesses I've worked at that we focus on, and it's people, process, and technology. If you kind of bucket each one of those individually and say, hey, you're operating, you have a go-to-market motion that you're executing on. If you're seeing a failure of your product being adopted in the market, you have one of three problems. You either have a people problem, right? The person that is delivering that message is not going to be the right person for that position or to take your message and move forward with, or the activity that's necessary, or the targets that you're looking for. All those things go into why a person might not be a good fit for your company. The process, you might have a broken process. You might ultimately have something in your process where things are not moving through your sales and marketing funnel correctly, and it could be due to the fact that you have a process problem. Or three, you have a technology problem, meaning that either the technology you have that you're using to execute this strategy, or the actual product that you're trying to sell in the market is not being adopted or doesn't have enough value proposition to go. You really can look at those three things as being the core reason why something doesn't happen. Now, in today's day and age, you also have market conditions that have to be taken into account. This is very interesting, and I'm not going to use the word unprecedented because it is not unprecedented. This has happened before. Recessions happen, companies go under, all those things happen. What we're currently in is a bit of a transition period, and you can see it with how companies are even positioning themselves now. There has to be a tremendous value in not a nice to have, but a need to have. And so how can you convince your ideal customer profile that this is a must have in this new world that you're selling into? When budgets are decreased, when marketing and sales teams are being asked to do more with less or equal with less, you really have kind of this period of, all right, what can I do to ensure that this customer is seeing value in what we're doing, and that it's something that they're going to use during a time which is a down period. So I think that is very much where companies are trying to figure out if it's a nice to have or a must have. And to go one step further on that, there's kind of two different types of technology. You have a system of record and you have a system of action. Right. And you really can bucket every single technology that's out there into one of the two. So systems of record generally cannot be ripped out. That's your CRM, that's your marketing automation, that's your applicant tracking system, that's your financial system. Those pieces, since they hold the data, really hard to pull those out. Yeah. The systems of action absolutely can be ripped out and generally are nice to haves. And everything that is alignment around that, if you look at all the big businesses out there, like a Gong or an Outreach or a Vidyard or a Hopin or even a Postal, you look at these systems of action, and at the end of the day, do you really need all those things to go back to selling and creating a sales process, which is sending an email, making a phone call, sending a direct mail piece, and maybe sending someone something on social? You don't need all those things. You really don't. So, but it makes things a lot easier and a lot more scalable. When things are tough, sometimes you get in a position where you're going, you know what, I can pull back on these things until it comes back again. So really at Postal, what we're trying to figure out is, what are those ideal customer profiles that can adopt a software like Postal and help them save money or make more money in whatever they're doing? And we found that exists. It's just not where it existed 12 months ago. Yeah. And so we're iterating and moving forward on our own strategy, but ultimately, yeah, it's a different time right now.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say it's maybe some challenge around there. I guess as a founder, I'm thinking about, I rely so much on tools to keep such a bootstrap team.
Yeah.
And so things like Postal, things like that, I guess, illicit action and are in that category, I feel as though are even becoming a little bit more crucial in terms of the time it saves on productivity, but also the automation that you can kind of have integrated in it. So you can kind of leave it running in the background. One thing that you mentioned 3 things to really consider: people, process, and technology. What are the metrics that you really kind of use as signals to identify which part of that process isn't working or needs an area of improvement or needs technology or needs something to realign? I almost think of like a pipeline, right? If there's a crack in it, how can we mend that and move forward to keep streamlining things?
Yeah, I mean, your question is where do you know where the problem is?
Yeah.
And that is a thing that you get with systems of action. So that's the really difficult piece of taking systems of action out of your playbook.
Yeah.
Because once you do that, then you don't have a lot of visibility into what's going on. So really, that's that. When you look at the KPIs and how you can build a true go-to-market motion and a scalable go-to-market motion, you have to be looking at all of the signals that you're getting from this technology, that the stack that you have, right? Yeah. So if you're going through an outreach tool or a tool like Chorus or something that allows you, or other VoIP providers that are allowing you to track calls and see activity from a phone perspective, you have your lead generation connecting tools like ZoomInfo and LinkedIn. You can always see how much prospects you've actually put into your Salesforce. Then you actually take a look at your marketing automation system. Okay, what's your website visitors? What's all the content you're providing out there? Who is visiting your website? At what scale? And then you're moving down the funnel of how many emails are being sent, how many meetings are being sent, how much opportunity, and then how much close, and then how long it takes you to close those things, your costs to acquire a customer. I mean, all of those financial metrics and activity metrics can be gathered from any VC site, right? I mean, people always tout about what the new metrics are, what you should be focused on. Ultimately, we all have to be focused on one thing, and that is the customer. So a lot of these things you have these, you can tell if it's a people problem, obviously, from an activity standpoint or a close rate. It's like if they aren't doing the actions that it takes in order to create opportunity, and then their close rates are low, then you know it's a person problem, and you might need to coach that person up or get a new person. From a process standpoint, you might be seeing that things are falling in through or not falling through in a specific part of the funnel. If you are seeing things not convert, then you have a process problem. You're trying to figure out, hey, at what point is this falling through? What's a technology problem or a product problem if you have companies coming in, trying the product, or ultimately seeing the value of the product and they're not renewing, or they're not seeing value using the product? So there are obviously all those indicators that you have a failed people, process, or technology problem. And candidly, there's a tremendous amount of data that you have to gather in order to really know that. And those are some of the struggles I think startups have of really understanding, hey, we got a problem, but where is that problem truly coming in? And for us internally in our own go-to-market motion, we've really been able to figure that out and hone in where our value is and what those numbers should be in order to convert and ultimately achieve our revenue goals. So and then achieve our revenue goals, and then help our customers achieve their revenue goals. Because by leveraging our system, they're able to see everything they weren't able to see before. And that is all the offline engagement that they're making, campaign-based engagement, having salespeople see that actually sending someone something in person converts at a higher rate. Like that wasn't really available before. Again, as a system of action in this direct mail component, it really is important to understand what the value is there. But it's just another channel, man. It's just the channels that you have and what is the success of those channels. And then also, when you look at an omni-channel approach, like all those different channels together, what's your overall outcome? So yeah, it sounds more complicated than it is. I've been doing it for a long time. It's been 15 years, but now that I know how it should look, a lot of it is muscle memory too, where you go, you know what? I know this isn't right. I got to figure out why it's not right. And my leaders always expect that from me, is that one of my sayings is inspect what you expect. And if you expect greatness and you're inspecting to see if that overall emotion that you have is producing greatness or falling short of greatness, then you have to adjust and make sure that you're coaching them to where we need to change and what we need to do. So yeah, that's a little bit on how I think about it.
No, I appreciate the insight. And one thing, just out of curiosity, being that you take such an omni-channel approach to get ICPs interested in your product, or at least educate them, what have you seen maybe as a surprise that had been kind of undervalued but overperformed in the type of approaches that you're taking, being postal mail, being all these other services that you provide? What's been surprising and even outperforming?
Yeah, well, I think that the craziest number that I've seen, and I don't want this to be an advertisement of Postal, but when you look at the actual numbers that we have, which we don't share a lot, which we should, the number that stands out to me is that 50% of the things that are sent through the platform are accepted. Meaning that of all of the millions of things that our customers, over 500 customers have sent, that 100,000 plus users have sent, 50% of those items are accepted, meaning that the item that they sent got to that person's house. And it was just, and to me, I'm just like, that is just the craziest stat. Because even in a cold outreach, we have a 70% open rate of that email when it's an email, or a click-through rate. And on that actual landing page, there's an incredible amount of transactions that happen and people are giving their address and their information and booking meetings with the providers. So I think that, like, when you actually look at our channel and what Postal is doing, it is one of the best engagement softwares out there. It just happens to be leveraging sending something, right? And something of value, or incentivizing someone to take action on something, whether it be a meeting or attending an event or doing something. So I just think that that's a really interesting stat. And you look across the channels and you just go, what is another channel that I can kind of compare this result to? And the way I look at it is if you have Google ads, you say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and spend $1,000 on Google ads, and I'm going to spend $15 cost per click, meaning that I'm going to spend $15 to get someone to hit my website and take in information. And then at that point, there's another conversion event that happens of them booking a meeting, or then converting into an opportunity. So $1,000 there, and to say that you had $1,000 and you sent t-shirts, you sent a $15 t-shirt. So those two actions, we did a test on this to see how much opportunity was created just from the $1,000 spent on keywords versus $1,000 that was spent in t-shirts. And it was like a 30x return on t-shirts than advertising. So the way that I think we're looking at this fundamentally is, and I wrote a blog post on it, you can take a look on LinkedIn. The way that we're fundamentally looking at this world, I think, is incorrectly. We know the customers that we want to go sell. We know the individual customer profiles, or the use case that we want to sell to, meaning we're selling to marketing, HR, success, finance, whatever you're selling into. You know who those people are. You are going to have a exponential return if you send them a t-shirt versus an advertisement.
Yeah.
And that is just not fundamentally how businesses think. They think that, I have to do cost per click. I have to spend
Yeah.
X amount to get them into the funnel to get content. But at the end of the day, you might actually just need to send someone a T-shirt to get them to take an action or a meeting. So like I really think that we're in very early, and we've been able to prove that through Postal because we have that system of action data to see how it's converting and how it's integrated into Salesforce and some of the marketing automation systems that we use. So that being said, I mean, like we have a long road to hoe because we need to be able to tell that story more effectively. But I do think that there's going to be a change over the next 5-10 years as we think about how do customers and companies try to create value and create actions that actually create opportunities for their business and value for their customers. And there's a transition happening right now, and I think that more companies are being a little bit more thoughtful around where they're putting their marketing dollars.
Yeah.
And my hope is that they're tracking the same data that we are and leveraging Postal to ultimately see the benefit of offline engagement, which is extremely powerful.
How often do you think companies are investing in the wrong outreach strategy? And like they just thinking about it. If you're doing Instagram ads, you're probably a direct to consumer product because the transaction
Yeah.
volume you want high, you want a lot of eyes, you want a broad audience. But if you are, say, selling software to a law firm or something like that, they're less engaged on those platforms. So it necessarily doesn't make sense to be on LinkedIn ads and all this other stuff, but or creating like a tight referral network based on the experience. Because I think, first of all, I think referral word of mouth is never going to go away. So building those relationships is just going to
Yeah.
be, that's going to be every bread and butter for all companies. But how often would you say companies are investing in the wrong strategies and are it's a challenge for them to shift that mentality, being that they're supposed to be doing what's popular? Air quotes there for the audience who didn't see.
Well, if you would have asked me this question 12 months ago, I probably would have had a different answer. But I think that every single company is doing something wrong right now. I don't think there's anybody that's figured it out. Everybody's cost to acquire a customer is increasing right now.
Mhm.
And we're drastically trying to figure out how do you decrease that overall cost to acquire a customer? Because either our target market has changed, meaning that before I went to SMBs and mid markets, and now I'm going up market into enterprise. And to go get enterprise customers, it's more expensive. So I'm going to take the same strategy that I do with SMBs and going to put it in enterprise. That doesn't work. That's a flawed strategy, right? So
Yeah.
I think that or companies saying I was in the enterprise and now I'm going SMB, or I'm turning my SMB into a consumer product. Like there's so much transition that's happening in boardrooms right now
Yeah.
that everyone is just trying to figure out how to get to a place that they have scalability again.
Yeah.
And in technology software specific, I'm just talking about software right now. In software specifically, there's a lot of conversations going around. Hey, what can we do in order to take these businesses that were money eating machines to profitable businesses? And I'm just like, it's very difficult to take a business that would grow through venture capital and ultimately growing through just getting ourselves to a point to where the revenue is covering the cost. But until that point in time, it's going to cost a lot of money to build these businesses to, hey, I'm going to become profitable. That's a very difficult thing to do in a business that is built for Series A, B, and C, and expecting it's going to get profitable. So I think we're going to see a lot of tombstones, candidly, over the next 6 to 12 months of companies that just couldn't get there and that don't have financial models that make sense. Hence why you're seeing all the layoffs and everything that's happening. Companies are just like struggling to get to profitability, which some companies just can't. They just can't get there because of their size. So anyway, that's a bit of a roundabout way of answering that question. But I truly think that everybody, and the consumer side too, is that the cost to acquire a customer on consumer side, we see all this traction through social media and influencers. I think that continues. I think there's going to be a tremendous opportunity there, but ultimately there's so many applications out there now that there's so much competition for eyeballs that the cost to actually acquire a customer for a consumer app is extremely high, way higher than it's been in the past. So you have a considerable amount of problems around that. And to go one step further, because I always do, you look at AI and you just look at what this actually does to the amount of content, the amount of applications, the amount of things that are out there that create noise, you just never know what it's going to do. And my guess is it just is going to increase the cost to acquire a customer at the end of the day even more because of how much competition is going to be out there. And not just competition in your industry, but actually competition for eyeballs. Like everybody is a fruit fly. Everybody's just kind of buzzing around and just trying to see what's sweet. And if they leave right away. It's like, oh, that's not sweet anymore. I'm going to go. So you have to figure out how to market and sell to fruit flies. And I think that is a very difficult thing to do. And ultimately, I think we're in a position where there's going to be a lot of change that happens in the next year to 5 years.
Yeah. I envision almost like an old operator, and it's almost like a bunch of lights flashing on a switchboard, and one marketing campaign might work really well, but then another campaign might work, or this cold outreach strategy, or this referral partner is great. It's like all these different things. It creates be so agile. And I agree. I mean, I think a lot of companies haven't figured out how to necessarily acquire customers efficiently to take on the operating costs and actually be profitable, which obviously with venture dollars decreasing, you're seeing a lot of companies kind of go belly up because they weren't operating in a profitable model. And,
well, nobody was. Nobody was. I mean, it's like, the change, and you're very astute in this world. You can't change overnight. I mean, when Q3 of 2022 came around, we had been given guidance by venture capital in Q2 that, hey, it's going to change. And we're just like, okay, does that mean that we're never going to raise capital again, or what's going to happen? Like, what happens to those multi-billion-dollar funds? I mean, I think last thing I read, there was like $75 billion of venture capital sitting on the sidelines right now. And that's not even the IPO market that hasn't been released yet. Once this IPO market starts coming again, there's going to be more funds to have to deploy there. So you just wonder what's going to happen. And I think that the impact, candidly, to venture capital during this time is pretty dramatic. I mean, like growth equity has the potential of being forever changed. And if they're not investing in companies that are in their B and C round, and they're just looking at seed investments, but seed investments are being valued at a significant less, why would you ever, as a founder who's starting a business today, build a non-profitable company?
You wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't do it. You would just build a profitable company and figure out how to do it yourself. And I think that's a very kind of interesting part right now, because you have all these businesses that have been funded, all these businesses over the last 5 years that have grown to a rate, but are dependent upon venture capital. And now that money's gone, it's like, what's going to happen there? And you can't flip it into profitability without completely pivoting. But if you completely pivot, then that's going to cost time and money as well. So it's a very interesting position that we're in, and I'm obviously very close to it and interested to see how it shapes up.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of venture capital companies will turn into private equity in terms of only investing in companies that are profitable, right? Rather than users, or rather than growth and X amount of quarter. It all is frivolous unless you're able to offer value and really monetize on the exchange that you're having, right? Whether it's a services or product. So it'll be interesting to see where the landscape goes and see what companies come from this era, as it was so interesting to think about after the recession and the dot-com boom. Kind of almost like that other cycle. I'm almost excited.
Yeah, it's the next cycle
in terms of that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've always said I think the best businesses are they happen during recessions, and you can look back in history, and some of the best businesses in the world started during recessions. So if that's the case, then we really got to just fall off a cliff. I mean, we got to be in a recession for that to happen, and I think that's the biggest issue that I see right now, is that it just feels like a slow burn right now, and that slow burn is just going to be very difficult to get away from if this is going to be the next. Remember, it's already been about 8 months. So now if we're looking at another 12 months or another year, if we're not in a recession yet, then when is it? And when can we expect that cliff? And we just don't know. And I think that's the worst position for all of us to be in as entrepreneurs, because we just don't know when it's going to come back. And in 2008 and 2009, 2010, those 3 years, that very much was kind of a period of time that it was everyone knew it. We're in a recession. We're in kind of a mode where we're just not spending. We're getting to unit economics that are positive, and then you were able to kind of get out of it. But the whole entire country said, no, we are in a recession right now. We can't say that right now because it's really just a tech recession. We're just in a tech recession right now. Financial services, healthcare, manufacturing, everything is going in the right direction outside of technology. So that's a weird place for innovators to be in. And it's something that I lose sleep a lot about because I can't control it. I can't control what's happening out there, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I think that this will be a case study at some point in time that all the business schools will be teaching about, just like 2008 and 2001.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so obviously you talked a little about the traction, you talked about some risks. If everything goes well, what's the long-term vision for the company?
For Postal, I mean, this business is very unique in the sense that we actually launched during COVID. So we launched in May of 2020. And this business really hasn't seen the light of day yet, which I think is extremely interesting because when you see how much progress we've made in such a short time, we've only been in market for 36 months, but during those 36 months, it's been really rough.
Yeah.
So I look at what this business does outside of a recession or a pandemic, and I'm stoked for it. I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for Postal in the future.
Yeah.
And we're continuing to build. And I think if we're right, we're attacking a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the company could be a very big company someday. And I think we've got all the markings for that. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I love this next section I call my founder FAQ. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions and we'll see what we get. First thing I always like to open it up is what's particularly hard about your job day to day?
Managing people.
Yeah. How are you able to do it? Is it reinvesting in culture, talking about strategy, being hyper communicative, having people?
We are 100% open door, transparent company. I mean, we try to make sure that everybody understands exactly what's going on in this business at every single point in time. We love building culture, even in a remote culture, being able to do fun things and create career paths for people, whether it be inside of Postal or even outside of Postal. We give back to our community. That's a very important piece of what we're doing. And ultimately, our guiding light is always the customer and servicing the customer. So yeah, I mean, those are all the things that we do that keep people motivated. And we also provide equity for everybody that works here. We think everybody should get a piece of the pie that works on this thing. So
yeah. Transparency is an interesting topic because I think everybody knows it's kind of a word that people use, kind of like scaling, and nobody really knows the mechanics behind what doing it successfully is. And how have you been able to keep a transparent kind of line of communication with other employees without either raising the alarm or having people get into too much information? Or it's a balance, but I think the best organizations just do it wholeheartedly. But I'm curious to see how
it's either if it's good or it's bad. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's just you have to provide the line of communication to tell either if it's good or bad. And the thing is our Slack community is so open. I mean, everybody engages on Slack any given time, and I try to take it on myself to engage with at least one person that is an individual contributor a day.
Yeah.
So I will be, whether it's just inquisitive, like, hey, let me hear about what you're doing today. Like, tell me about how I can help. Or, hey, what are some of the problems that we can work and solve together? I mean, one of the big methodologies we use here is that bring solutions, not problems.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's got problems. The whole entire world has problems, but let's bring solutions to Postal instead of problems. And I think everybody really lives by that. And I think that's why we've been able to build such a great culture. And you can see that on Glassdoor and some of the other things that we've won due to our culture. But it's also it's great being in a small town. We love San Luis Obispo. We've been able to be a big giver back to this community. And I think that people recognize that and appreciate that. So that's why we do it. But
I love that. What's something that you're good at now as a founder, but you wish you were better at earlier on in your career?
Ooh, man, that's a great question. I think it is the roller coaster, appreciating the highs and appreciating the lows. Some insight I got very early on in my career as a leader was that, it's never as good, it's never as bad. And you have to be able to show everybody that, listen, this might be an amazing thing that happened, or this might be the worst thing on earth that's happened, but ultimately you have to really show the company that this is okay. It's okay if this happens. It's okay to fail, or it's okay to be great. All those things, the expectations and how you set up your compensation plans and how you recognize your people, those things will it'll play to your strengths. You just can't show emotion overly or under to make sure you're not getting people off the line. Earlier in my career, I was very hot all the time. I ran very hot, and I try not to do that anymore. My folks probably tell you that I get pretty spirited at times, and I try not to be that way. But passionate people, it's gonna show, right?
Yeah.
It's just like I got Viking blood, and that's hard to get rid of. But at the end of the day, our people, they need to see that Erik is got the helm, and that we're going to be okay no matter what happens. And I think we do that okay.
Yeah.
Do that okay.
Yeah. How do you balance out the times and recharge? What are some things that you do outside of work to really kind of give yourself the capacity to take on everything that you go in and day out? Anything other founders can implement in their lives that can help?
Yeah, I mean, I really have instituted like the three buckets, and the three buckets are work, family, and health. And so you only have 100%. People that say give 110%, it makes me laugh because you really only have 100% of your energy.
Yeah.
You can't give more than 100%. So where do you believe that your energy should be spent? Is it work? Is it your friends and your family, or is it your health? And a lot of entrepreneurs get in a situation where they put instead of doing thirds, maybe they'll put 70% in the work bucket, and then their health decreases and their relationship with their family decreases. Or some people say, hey, I'm not going to work as much 25. I'm going to focus on my health and my family, but maybe family is challenged because you're not making the capital that you need in order to support your family. So it's this or like when you look at health, it's very difficult because the health piece, you really need to take care of yourself mentally and physically. And I've always had challenges around this because the amount of effort that I put forward on the work and the family side. So I try to make sure that I'm focusing on my health and staying healthy. And I think that founders have to look at those three things and just assess themselves like, hey, am I giving back to my company? Am I giving back to my family, or am I giving back to my health? And prioritize those things at any given time.
Yeah.
You have the opportunity to increase and decrease those things. If you're a founder or a CEO of a successful business or any business, we know that you can work. We know that you can do it and figure it out. But sometimes it's better to be like, hey, I need to spend time with my family, or I need to spend time on my health, and those things become more of a priority. And I think as long as you have really good people around you at your company, then you can do those things and you can adjust over time. But that's at least how I look at it.
How do you find the right people to bring on board? What do you look at?
Yeah, I mean, the network thing we talked about earlier, of just making sure that you keep your network and that you're trying to give back to your community, give back to, and that might be an online community or a physical community or even your where you live. That network will work for you. I mean, you can find amazing people that have the same core values that you do and your business does. And I think that if those things align and you do it right, then you'll attract really good people. And I think that's what we've been able to do at Postal. I mean, a lot of the folks that are in executive function I've known and worked with before. And so I've been able to pull them over to say, hey, let's do this together. And there tends to be a lot of positives and some negatives around that. Sometimes the people that you bring over, they just don't work out for whatever reason. And that's always difficult when you see people that are in your network that don't work out. But I think that finding good people are everywhere. It's just a matter of finding your network and really targeting those people that share those core values with you.
Yeah, I love that. I always like to ask this next question because I love how founders extract information out of anything they ingest, whether it's early in your career or now. What books or people have influenced you the most?
Yeah, I mean, Lincoln on Leadership was one of the first leadership books I read, and that was just a foundational how Lincoln learned by walking around and engaging the ground trips and really understanding how the individual contributors kind of gave back and what they cared about, and that's why people loved fighting for them and ultimately the country. I think that from on the business side of things, right now I'm reading 0 to 1. Blitzscaling was a great book for me. I'm reading. Let's see, what else have I read lately? I'm kind of getting into Einstein's book right now. Just trying trying to run through those business books that are out there that are on the list, Elon's books or Bill Gates's books. But I try to read every single day. It might not be a book. It might be just getting my RSS feed and combing through what's going on and in current events. I listen to a lot of news because I think the macro financial environment right now is really interesting.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are going on that you really need to understand as a founder. And I think I always lean on my network to help teach me. And so I have a very close-knit group of founders and executives that I'm able to engage with at any time to help educate me on the things that I want to learn about. And I'm very, very interested in how AI is going to impact this. And I took a course at MIT around it, and it got me into a really good headspace of how I can take advantage of some of these things that are out there in the future. So there's the information and education has never been more accessible. And I encourage everybody to take a look at Coursera, or even just you can get free courses online and podcasts and in format on Spotify or whatever else. And so there's a lot out there that you have that's available. So yeah, educate yourself in the things that you love.
I love that. And I know we're at the end of the show here, so I'd like to make sure we didn't leave anything on the table. Is there any question I didn't ask you that I should have, or anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to touch on right before? Anything we left on the table here, Erik?
No, this has been great, man. I really appreciate the time, and I hope to all the listeners out there this was valuable. And you guys can reach me at on LinkedIn or Erik@Postal.com. And yeah, anything I can do to help anybody, I always try to answer all the messages that are sent my way.
Amazing, Erik. You beat me to it. You gave us your plugs, and so I'm so excited for my audience to learn more about your journey, learn about what Postal doing, how they can really identify the pieces in their funnel. If you're a founder out there on where to kind of investigate if things aren't transacting at the volume that you need to, or you're not getting in front of the right people, and how Postal can really enrich that experience for their customers, either new or existing. So excited to see where Postal goes and the expansion as you continue to grow. So thank you so much for being on the show. I hope you enjoyed yourself. And again, hope to see you soon on Behind Company Lines, maybe for a second round.
That sounds good. Thanks, Julian.
Of course.